المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم سبحانك لا فهم لنا إلا ما فهمتنا إنك أنت الجواد الكريم وقل رب زدني علما. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ومكروا ومكر الله والله خير الماكرين إذ قال الله يا عيسى إني متوفيك ورافعك إلي ومطهرك من الذين كفروا وجاعل الذين اتبعوك فوق الذين كفروا إلى يوم القيامة ثم إلي مرجعكم فأحكم بينكم فيما كنتم فيه تختلفون. صدق الله مولانا العظيم. So alhamdulillah, in the past couple of days we've had quite a long discussion on these verses, explaining their basic meaning, and the last point that we want to elucidate here is a little bit more clarity on the ascension of Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam and his return. So basically, as was mentioned, the summary that was mentioned previously, that during the time of Isa alayhi salam, at the end of his sojourn, his first sojourn on the planet, so the Jews plotted against him to get him removed, as they saw him as an obstacle in the path of their supremacy and their authority. And in that plot, the plot failed, it backfired on them. Rather than getting Isa alayhi salam crucified and killed, one of their own persons, as is mentioned in the Quran, مَا قَتَلُوهُ مَا صَلَبُوهُ وَلَكِنْ شُبِّهَ لَهُمْ. They didn't kill him and they didn't crucify him, but actually it was appeared so to them. Appeared so. Because what happened was, as we probably mentioned earlier, is that the likeness of Isa alayhi salam was imprinted upon, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala caused that to happen, to imprint the appearance of Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam on one of their own, one of the Jews who had plotted against. And they say, according to the Christian tradition, it was Judas Iscariot who was actually the traitor who led the Jews and the Romans and the Byzantines to capture Isa alayhi salam. And perhaps when he himself was the one who, when he went into the house with others to capture Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam, in the meantime, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had lifted Isa alayhi salam body and soul, lifted him alive into the heavens where he is until this day. And the likeness of Isa alayhi salam was stamped upon that traitor of the Jews. Perhaps it was Judas Iscariot or anyone, Allahu a'lam, but one of them for certain. And so they thought, so the Jews, they felt that, or their belief is that Isa alayhi salam was not a prophet in the first place, he was an impostor, a'udhu billahi min dhalik, and they had disposed of him, he was killed and done away with, and that's the end of the story. The Christians, on the other hand, they also were confused by this, in this issue, because they also believed that he was crucified on the cross. So they also were in confusion regarding this impression of Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam upon one of the Jews. So they are unaware of that. However, they also believe that their belief is that Isa alayhi salam was crucified and he died, but he was brought back to life. And he came back, and he mentioned that according to their tradition, and then he was lifted up. So they believe that he was lifted up, and they also believe that he's coming back. And we also believe that he's coming back. However, he, according to our tradition, and our tradition is substantiated by the Quran, and it also is logical that how would Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow such a plot, to culminate on the hands of his enemies. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala lifted Isa alayhi salam, and he is there remaining alive, and he will be sent down at the end of time, and he will lead the vanguard of the Muslims against Dajjal and against those very Jews who had continuously, from that time up until today, plotted against, deen and plotted against haqq. And so ultimately, Isa alayhi salam will be vindicated, and he will have his, for lack of a better term, his revenge. In other words, those who plotted against him, ultimately, they would be taken to task. And not only that, but Dajjal, the biggest fabricator and liar and deceiver that humankind will face, will also be, his demise will be brought at the hand of Isa alayhi salam. He will actually kill Dajjal. And at that time, of course, all the Muslims will be following him, and the Christians also will accept Islam at that time. And those who are lucky, perhaps of the Jewish community as well, although probably many of them, as is mentioned in Hadith, will remain obstinate until the very end, and they will meet their demise accordingly. Now, one last point is that Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam went to great pains to explain and detail the description of Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam. So we know even how he looks and how he will come down in Damascus, coming down on the wings of two angels, on the Jamia Damascus. I mean, the place is known, and the way in which he's going to descend from the heaven is known. Also his physical appearance is known. At the same time, the Dajjal, who he will defeat, his appearance is very clearly described in Hadith. Not only it's clearly described, it is what we call mutawatir. There are so many ahadith pointing to this. One of our scholars mentions 100 hadith which are mutawatir, meaning the chain of narration is from a huge amount of individuals relating from another huge amount of individuals, the number of which it's impossible to imagine that any of them, that they could have, tried to create some sort of lie, or they could have, told fabricated, this whatever that they're informing about. So there's a huge amount of hadith literature that substantiates this fact, that Isa alayhi salam was lifted physically and by body and ruh, and he will come back at the end of the time, and he will also kill Dajjal. And at that time, everyone who is lucky, Muslims and Christians and whoever, are going to accept the deen of Islam. Last point, Isa alayhi salam, so will he be a prophet at that time or what? So at that time, his prophethood would have ceased, because the prophethood of Nabi alayhi salam abrogated all prophethoods previous. So he will be as a Khalifa of Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam. He will be a representative of Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam following his Sharia, and his prophethood will have come to an end, and he will meet his natural death here on the earth after that. And it's mentioned that perhaps 7 to 40 years there will be the best time that humankind have seen, since the time of Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam. After that, the end of time, all Muslims will be taken from the earth, and upon a people, none of which even say Allah on them, the Qiyamah will be taken. And we'll hear more about that in Surah An-Nisa when more details are mentioned about Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam. Wa akhir da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.